is, or making there's components for like arms or legs or necks or things like that that you could use with the skinny ones. So just so you can see, these are not the widths, but you're going to make something about that big, maybe a little smaller than that, but it's going to be 5 or 6 inches tall, and you're going to make something about that big, okay, a little bit taller, okay? Any questions on that? So those are requirements. I'm going to be checking those off. We'll just throw that there for a second. Now let's go to coil pots. So you go to a coil pot, you're going to grab clay and you're just going to squish it into a log. Now this log needs to be thinner than one of these rolling pins. Okay, and why is that? If you start rolling it out and it's thicker, it's going to go flat. So now that this is big, we're going to make it smaller. And I'm going to start to roll it out. So when I roll out my coils, I'm going to take it from my fingertips and kind of throw it. It's going to barely touch my hand. Throw it through my hands to my wrists. What I'm not doing is pushing the whole way and pulling back on it the whole way. So I'm going to run this back and forth, and anytime there's a thicker spot, I'm going to just hang out there, and I'm just kind of moving my hands outward just a little bit. Let it roll itself out is basically what we're doing. If it gets too wide, you can kind of maneuver. With all of you doing this at the same time, you're going to have to be kind of cautious of each other so you don't ruin each other's projects. Just kind of work around and be like, hey, I'm going to roll out. They can stop for a minute. It's not that big of a deal. And I'm going to roll this out so it's about the thickness of my pinky. Okay, that looks about right. I don't want it much thicker. I don't want it thinner for what we're doing. And that's a nice long, that will give me, for what we're doing, enough coils to wrap up 3 times. So we're going to make a coil pot that has 3 coils high, and then it's going to transition out or in 2 coils, and then the other way out or in 2 coils. So it's going to be a total of 7 coils minimum with transitions. So what does that look like? Something like that. Okay, so 3 coils, we're starting to talk about the body of things. Going in, we're making shoulders. Going out, we're creating a flange or a lip. They could be hips, they could be all kinds of things that we're learning to make. You could go out first and then in, I don't care. But that's 3 tall, 2, and 2. Okay, so that's going to be a minimum on coils. And we're going to make the coils disappear. So, because I already have this slab, I'm going to recommend that you start off with something organic, not like a star or something, although you can do coils as a star. But I'm going to come in here and just be like, we're going to do that. And so I'm going to score this. And I'm going to score this. Now, if you're working with a coil and you're working slower than I do, one of a couple of things. Don't roll out so much. You can add a tiny bit of water to one of the ends so it stays a little bit wetter. You can also put a bag over it so it doesn't dry out. But if you're working with this coil and 25 minutes from now you get to the end here, it's going to be not workable anymore. You know, it's not going to be leather hard, but it's going to be a little bit crusty. And you don't want that, do you? No, Mr. Jones, I don't want that. Oh, good. Now, on the scoring of this, I'm just making marks. I'm not being super accurate. Because the clay is workable and we are going to compress it together, I'm not too concerned that it's perfect, whatever that means. My wife said I was perfect yesterday, and I was like, oh, with all my flaws, I'm perfect. Actually, she didn't say that. She would never. Just kidding, she would. Anyways, coils. 2 ways to stack these. We could stack them so they just go 1 coil, 2 coils, 3 coils, okay, and it's just 1 layer. Or how I usually like to do it, at least the bottom ones, is I just spiral them up and they lay on top of each other. If you do it this way, and the bottom seam is down here, make the next seam over there. You don't want all the seams to line up. If you do, and the seams line up, you're going to create a tension area that's going to want to pop open. So we stagger these so that they're not lined up together. And I'm going to come in here and add a little bit of slip. Again, but for this bottom one, I like to do, and just coil it up. For the transition ones, I'm going to do them 1 layer at a time. So I'm going to start. I'm going to push down and pinch. So if your coil is not like perfectly round, it's okay, because you're just going to be compressing this anyways. Now we get to here, and I need to score up here. Get that up just a little bit. And just a little bit of slip there, not too much. Top, squish that together. If it's starting to angle out already, if your project needs it to angle out, that's great. I want this to go pretty much straight up and down. And we're going to add some more score marks. So I'm 2 layers up. Again, minimum of 3. Just so I know you know what you're trying to accomplish. Tiny bit of slip. And we get up, and I'm not quite long enough there, so we'll get that squished together and make another small coil. Yeah. And if your coil does get, again, round and has some flat spots, don't stress. You're just going to squish it. Now when you bind together, you can do a butt edge or a butt joint. You can make a taper over. You can kind of choose that. It's not as critical here as it is when we do a slab, because I got the underneath, and because I'm going to put coils on top, I have lots of things tying it together. But for this sake, I'm going to come in here and just set that on top. I'm going to cut this at an angle. That's going to go in there. And then all I do is come here and kind of measure over and just cut that fairly flat. And it's fairly flat. Okay. Go around and squish stuff. Everyone's going to have their own little way of doing things. I'm going to come in with my wood knife. You're going to get one of these today. And I'm going to clean up the inside bottom seam. But because I'm going to close this off with a head or something like that, I'm not really going to clean up the inside. Just make sure it's strong. There are pottery ceramists out there who, if you took their pieces and they're all sculpted and they're all closed off, and you broke them, their insides are as neat and cleaned up as their outsides. And if that's you, go right ahead. Okay, I'm not going to require that. We want it to hold together. Now, as we look at this, anyone want to tell me what's wrong with it? You can see the coils. And the reason why it's just a personal thing for me. I don't like how coils look, but I do like what we can do with them. So we're going to either use our hands or a wood knife. And it's hard to show you because you do it this way. But you come in here and you're just going to push down, kind of support on the inside. And you're going to get some little chunks out. Your fingers work fine. Let's see if this works. When you hold it like this, you tend to bend it a little bit. Okay, get that going. Sometimes if you bring it to the edge, you can work it that way. You're gonna find what works best for you. It should not be in the leather hard stage. You're not gonna be able to manipulate it as much. The clay should not be really wet. So if you have extra slip coming out of those areas, make sure that you dry it off and dry your hands off. Because if you're only wiping the slip around, you're not doing any structural movement, you're only doing surface cleaning. And we'll get to the surface here in a second. So structurally, that's put together pretty well. Okay, we can see that the coils are mostly disappeared, right? And now we're going to take our little measuring stick, and I'm just going to paddle this. And again, whatever you're trying to accomplish, you work to that. But I shouldn't be able to see your coil seams. You could smooth this out a little bit now, or you can wait till it's more leather hard. Again, it depends on what you're planning to do with it. If you're going to smooth it out, you grab a sponge and some water, and you squeeze that water all the way out. And then, if we can see, you're just going to come in here and just lightly, again, do it while it's on the ground, but just lightly smooth that out. And then when it's leather hard, you can do it again. Too much water creates more problems than it's worth. Okay, I'm going to put a tiny bit of the water on the rim because we've been working it, and we're going to add to it. So this right here could be a torso again, right? And we can come in, we can put some shoulders on there, and then a neck, and all of a sudden becomes a head, or an area to put a head. Now, we're going to roll this out. We're going to start with our transitions. If, for some reason, your clay does get really floppy and flat, all you're going to do, you're going to twist it like this, put it back down, and then start to roll it out. And that'll help to get it back into a circular-ish shape or form. Okay. So do we want to transition out or in first? What? In, okay, perfect. So if we're going to go in, we need to score on the inside of our rim, not on top. not flat on the inside, but kind of on that edge. Now, if you're fairly particular, and we're going to talk about this on pinch pots, and you're like, but that rim is not 100% flat, I'm going to show you on pinch pots how to make it a nice even flatness. And you can do that on this as well. We call those our particulars. Before I score this, I'm just going to measure it. So we're going to go to there. And whatever you're particular about, if there's a way to solve that problem without hindering your progression and bogging you down, I say go for it, right? That's just how you are being you on this project. If you can't figure out how to move past something, come find me. We'll see if we can't help you move past. Or again, sometimes I'll be like, maybe this is too chunky for you right now, but let's do this, and then you can come back and do this. And hopefully that solves the problem, whatever the problem might be. Add a little bit of slip. And we're going to put this on the inside. And the clay is soft, so don't push too hard because it's going to start bending it. Push it together. Remember the word compression? It's a big part of what we do with hand building. We compress clay together. Okay. If it is wet, you can wipe it on the table. Sometimes you'll see me, I wipe it on my pants. You don't need to do that. Usually on days I have meetings with like someone from the district, I try to be as dirty as possible when I go to those meetings. So. And every parent-teacher conference I debate, do I change my shirt? Do I not change my shirt? It's a real thing. All right, we're going to score this again. See how that's transitioning in. If it's starting to flop on you or slump, you can wait a little bit until it hardens up just a little bit. You can come in here and score and slip this because you don't want it to flop. If it's flopping, it's too thin. If it's flopping, it's too wet. Measure that. Anyone have any questions on this? So I'm not going to do the transition out. I think you'll be able to figure that out. So we can move on to putting our pinch pots together. We need some clay for a coil. We're going to get our shelves today, we get our tools today, and we get out of here at 12:20. So we should have 25, 30 minutes to play around with clay today. So we're going to squish this in there. While I'm demoing, while you're working, while we're learning, while you're seeing stuff on the board for bell work, hopefully you're starting to imagine what maybe you could make, whether it's something that you see, I don't know, Mario, that just came to mind, right? That would be a figurative sculpture, or something you want to make up all on your own. We'll talk Wednesday, But my definition of a figure or figurative sculpture is pretty broad. And it has to have something that deals with the figure or a body, but it could be anything from a robot to an animal to a zombie to a human. I mean, we're going to be all over the place. It's going to be fun to watch what you guys make. So if I wanted this to be shoulders, I could put another one going in. So it went in just a little bit more, and then like a head could sit on there, right? Okay, any questions on that? So 3 high, 2 high, 2 high, you choose, but so it needs to be a total of 7. Now, on pinch pots, if you're really into making them perfectly flat, which is perfectly fine, what you can do is you can take any sort of a measuring device, you're going to set it down and pick your low spot wherever you want to trim, and you're going to make a mark, okay? And on that mark, I'm now just going to go and mark all the way around, and then I would come in here. I don't know if you can see that, but I'd come in there and trim that all the way around, and it's going to be fairly flat, okay? So I'll do that on one side, and then I'll show you how I do it on the other side. And I'm just cruising through this. You could get an actual ruler and measure. That's going to be 2 1/4 inches, and run from there. When we get to the wheel, I'm going to show you how to do this on our pieces as the wheel's spinning. So we could even do this with this. We could go center it, put it on the wheel. That'd be pretty cool. And I'm just taking that off. Like so, and now it's fairly flat, okay? And then I would come in and compress it. If I want to, I can come in here and clean that up just a little bit. Now, requirements on pinch pot. So now that I didn't do that to both, I have some openings, right? So all I'm gonna do on this is come in here and just eyeball it. Just go, I'm gonna cut there, I'm gonna cut there. So you need to make 3 pinch pots. One that is just a bowl, so I can see the inside and the outside. I can see the thickness. And 2 that you're going to put together and score and slip. Okay, they should be, I'm going to say that's a pound of clay, 3/4 to a pound of clay, something like that. Again, we're not looking for huge things. We're looking for pieces that fit into our hands. These sculptures are going to be like a maximum of like 7 inches tall. Okay, so they're going to be about this big. We don't want sculptures that are this big. That's a whole different animal to deal with. I'm going to come in here and score this. So 3 pinch pots. I want to be able to see the thickness of one of them. And then the others are you're going to put together, so I know you can do that. So it looks almost seamless. I'm going to show you 2 ways to fix that seam today. We already talked about the slab pieces. Okay, a little bit of slip. And then as I'm putting this together, the thickness of your piece and anything that you close off is important to know what to do. So the thickness, it should not be thicker than a 1/2 inch. If you make a pinch pot, and I'm just going to kind of work this together, and the bottom is 1 inch thick, it's almost guaranteed to crack because that's a lot of clay to fire. But on this, if I make this ball and I close it off, before I fire it, I've got to put a hole in it somewhere, okay? Because it has to let the air escape. So I'm pushing that together. It's getting sealed up pretty good. There are 3 ways to clean up this little groove. 1, just run your finger back and forth. That's a pretty good way. If it's a big groove, you can come in here and stitch it, and then run your finger back and forth. And that's going to seal that up. And those are good. The way I like to do it though, I like to come in here and get a fairly thin coil. And because I've already sort of scored and slipped it, I'm not going to score and slip it anymore. A little thinner than that. And I'm just going to, as long as my clay is fairly workable, I'm going to run that into there. Okay, you see how that's sticking out now? And then I'm just going to come in here and, I missed a spot, and taper this off. So I'm just pushing it in and blending it to either side. A little more right there. If you're heavy-handed means you grab things tighter or you set them down and you're a little bit rough with stuff. It's hiding right now, but under here, for lots of different applications, we have different foam pads. And so if you're pushing this down and it's like squishing, you can grab a foam pad, which means you can push on it a little bit and it'll move with you. And if that's something you need, there's a bunch under there. Actually, I just got another chunk. I'm gonna cut some out. And I'm just gonna come in here. That allows just a little bit of movement so you're not ruining your stuff. Get it there. Then I'm going to, because I've trapped air, just gonna kind of bounce this back and forth in my hand and kind of see what it wants to do. The air kind of fights you, which is a good thing right now. Okay, I can come in if I want to and paddle it. Smooth it out some more. I could also come in, again, just lightly clean this up. But you cannot make a solid ball, and it cannot be, the walls cannot be thicker than a 1/2 inch. In fact, they should be at that 1/4, 3/8 inch, just in case. As I'm moving this around, I'm looking for any thin spots to see if I need to add some clay, score and slip it on there, whatever. You can also look for some inspiration. Maybe you come in here and you add some eyes and a little nose. Okay. So as you're doing this, and we're going to work on this a little bit today, but mostly on Wednesday, if you get your stuff done and you're like, I kind of want to sculpt on that too, go right ahead. Right, I'll be able to tell what's going on. If you want to play around and add a mouth and some teeth. whatever you feel like you want to do. So you're learning, but you're enjoying what we're doing. We'll actually talk Wednesday, Friday maybe, or next Tuesday. We have a couple things we're going to start doing. We'll talk about how we put in eyes and things like that if that's what you want to do. But again, we got our shoulders. Maybe I could put a neck on there. We have a head. We're starting to get what could be a figurative sculpture. Any questions on that? Okay, let's cover this though. So this is enclosed. This is not, right? If I put this on there and score and slip that on there, is this now enclosed? So there's no way to get in. So what has to happen before I'm done, I can work with it now, but there has to be a hole here in the bottom and a hole here somewhere. So if I'm planning on it, what I would do is poke a hole there, then score and slip it. That way air from the head can go down into air in the body, which then can go out. If we don't release that air, there's enough moisture trapped in there that it's probably going to blow up or crack. Okay, will it for sure? No, let's not try it. Okay, so we're gonna just play around with that a little bit. We'll add some more characteristics or some other things as we move forward, including if you want to do ears and stuff like that. But it doesn't have to be a human as you're thinking about it. You can think about anything. I'm going to show you a presentation on Wednesday. Did we get all the criteria? I think so. We got one section of each kind of filled in. Sweet. So we're going to do that starting today into Wednesday. It's a check off again. And in the end, we're going to break them. We're going to recycle them. We're going to start over. If you want to keep them as inspiration for your actual project, we can keep them long enough for you to do that. If you're like, I really like how this looks, whatever it is, and I want to redo that. But what we're trying to accomplish is, instead of learning the technique and doing a project at the same time, we're going to learn the technique. Then when we do the project, we have more foundation to rely on. Okay? Okay. Get out of here at 20 after. You're going to do these things.